Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam, and on behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for tonight's event with Maisy Card, here to discuss her debut novel, These Ghosts Are Family. We'll be hosting more virtual events in the near future, and you can learn more about them on our website by signing up for our email newsletter, as well as following us on social media at Book Soup. And you can follow us here on our Crowdcast page as well, and past events are also available on our YouTube channel. Tonight's event will end with a Q&A, and to submit a question, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. And if you see a question on the list that you'd like for our speakers to answer, please click the like button, and we will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. Also, please support Book Soup and our author tonight by purchasing a copy of tonight's featured book, which you can do by clicking on the green button right below the viewer screen. It'll redirect you to our website where you can finish the checkout process, and it doesn't interrupt the screen. It opens in a new window, so you can do that at any time. And with that said, I will introduce our guest for this evening. I have her book right here, These Ghosts Are Family. Maisy Card holds an MFA in fiction from Brooklyn College and is a librarian. Her short fiction has been published by, is that Ani? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Sycamore Review, Liars League NYC, and Ampersand Review. She earned an MLIS from Rutgers University and a BA in English and American Studies from Wesleyan University. These Ghosts Are Family, which was shortlisted for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize, is her first book. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Maisy. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So did you want to start off with, I think you wanted to start with reading an excerpt?
Yeah, I'll read just from the first chapter of the novel.
Perfect. And I will be right back.
So the first chapter is called The True Death of Abel Paisley. Let's say that you are a 69-year-old Jamaican man called Stanford, or Stan for short, who once faked your own death. Though you have never used those words to describe what you did, at the time you thought of it as seizing an opportunity placed before you by God. But since your wife Adele died a month ago, you've convinced yourself her heart attack was retribution for your sin. So today you have gathered 3 of your female descendants in one house, even the daughter who has thought you dead all these years, and decided you will finally tell them the truth. You are not who you say you are. You have spent the last 20 years of your second life living in a brownstone in Harlem, running a West Indian grocery store. Recently, you shuttered the store. You have given up fighting your arthritis pain and are finally sitting in the wheelchair Adele picked out. You are looking out of your parlor window, waiting for your daughter, the one who thinks you are dead, to arrive. It's been 35 years since you've seen her, so you study each woman who passes your house for reflections of yourself. You haven't bothered to shave, press your clothes, or comb your hair. You are ready to be still and rot. You imagine the death of Stanford Solomon, unlike the abrupt end of Abel Paisley, will be achingly slow. Already it feels like you are losing small pieces of yourself daily. To you, old age is the torture you deserve. A slow, insignificant death, your matter dispersing into the air like dandelion seeds until the day there's nothing left. When you died the first time, you were still a young man in your 30s and had been working in England for less than a year. It wasn't easy for an immigrant, especially a Black man, to find a decent job back then. But through a boy you'd known back in primary school, Stanford, you'd gotten a room and a job on a ship. You had no idea it was just the beginning of your streak of good luck. You and Stanford were the chosen wogs they allowed to work alongside the white men. Stanford complained often about London. He hated the cold. He missed his grandmother and the tiny village, Haroldtown, where you'd both grown up back in Jamaica. You'd already escaped the countryside for Kingston, and from there, London. You felt free. That sense of freedom and joy only dampened when you thought of the family you left behind. Your first wife, Vera, wrote you long letters weekly about how you'd abandoned her and left her to become a dried-up old spinster. But you both knew perfectly well that it was her idea for you to go to England, where she thought you'd somehow become a better provider. Your son, Vincent, was still in Vera's womb when you sailed off. Your daughter, Irene, a stumbling toddler. You had barely settled in when Vera's first letter arrived with a list of things she wanted you to buy and send to them. With every letter, the list grew longer, and you worried that you would never be enough. The day you died, you were running along the dock because you were late for work while a container was being lowered onto the ship. You stopped short when the container fell, dropped from the crane, and thundered against the deck. You were close enough to hear the screaming. "Who was it?" you heard someone shout. "One of the wogs," another answered. "It's Abel." For a moment, you were confused, hearing yourself pronounced dead. It was like one of those movies where the dead person's spirit stands by watching as a crowd gathers around his body. But no, you were certain it wasn't your body, so you boarded the ship. The captain approached you immediately and said, "I'm sorry, mate, no way Abel could have survived that." You almost laugh now when you think of it. The one time racism worked in your favor. The captain had gotten his wogs confused, looked you right in the eye, and mistook you for the other black guy. Abel was dead, crushed under the container, unrecognizable, but you, Stanford now, could turn and go home. Perhaps it's telling about your nature that you did not hesitate. You nodded and turned and walked away quickly from Abel and all of his responsibilities before any of the others had a chance to recognize you. I'll stop there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is such a wonderful book and the opening is so good. It's one of my favorite openings I've ever read in a novel. So to me, that opening chapter is a brilliant way to bring the reader in the world of this fractured family at the hands of the man who helped create it. It really sets up even though we move backwards in the lineage and forwards a little bit, at the man. So yeah, did you always know that you wanted to open with not only these characters in particular, but with different perspectives and also in second person? The second person was such a powerful way to draw us in, especially ending with Vera.
No, I didn't know. This was one of the later chapters of the book that I wrote, actually. I think I knew it took me a really long time to write this book. So at some point, I think I conceived the character of Abel, and I knew that he faked his own death. That was what was all the characters were going to kind of orbit around that secret, but I hadn't actually written it. I wrote other chapters first. So once I realized that, the book was ending and I needed to write this, I think I tried writing it in different perspectives. I think first I tried third person, and I just felt still distant from the character. And then I tried first person and I almost felt too empathetic towards the character in first person. And I think I had stayed away from second person for a while. I think at some point in the MFA program, somebody told me nobody likes second person. So I remember having a story and changing it and then not really going back to the second person until, I started writing this story. And I think the more I thought about it, I thought it was the best way to have the chapter kind of encompass simultaneous perspectives. Mm-hmm. I wanted the reader to kind of understand, Abel and his kind of rationale for faking his own death, but then quickly understand, the consequences and just kind of go back and forth. And it was kind of it kind of just ended up becoming this kind of blueprint for how to read the novel, because it kind of mimicked the structure of the rest of the book.
Yeah, it was really great. And I know that people say things about second person, but when it's done right, it works. And you did it. This was one of the best examples of second person I've seen. So it's really well done. So you've created such a rich world of characters that stands out on its own. And I'm wondering, what was the process like of creating so many different characters with such a detail of background, motives, and hopes and dreams for all of them? I mean, it really, even if we only see them for a short amount of time, we really get a whole picture of them, which is amazing with so many different people. So did it start out as vignettes that you placed together, or did you write it all at once? What was that process like?
No, I definitely didn't write it all at once. You know, I think when I first started doing press, I said that I started it in my MFA program, but then I realized I forgot that I started it actually when I was an undergrad, like in a creative nonfiction class. You know, and it started with this story that my mother always told me that my father had been a police officer in Jamaica and that he was in an accident and his partner was killed, and that's, you know, kind of why he ended up immigrating here. You know, so I started writing a kind of essay about that, and then when I went to the MFA program, I started writing other stories that were kind of based on memories and family stories, you know, and that's how it kind of evolved. And I think the good thing was that once I realized, at first they're all like, I mean, they're still fictional, but I didn't really have them connected. They were all supposed to be independent stories. But I think once I connected them, I felt kind of comfortable kind of reusing the same characters in multiple stories. And I just, yeah, I feel like I mean, I wrote this over 12 years, so I just sat with the characters for a very long time, and it became easier to kind of instinctively know like where to drop them in and where they should make an appearance again, or, you know, during the editorial process, if my editor said, you know, maybe this character should come back, you know, I kind of knew how they would behave, you know, at this point. But I think, you know, it's, you know, when you're writing, you know, you build characters based on so many different experiences and sources of inspiration. You know, so I think they kind of like layer and layer on top of each other, and they become a more complex, I guess, as you go along.
Yeah, that's great. So that actually, that kind of brings me into what inspired you to write this book, and was it inspired by your real family? If you've kind of shared just now, but if there's anything else to add to that part, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I think a lot of my family kind of inspired it. I mean, I think my family's not being silent and secretive inspired it. You know, it's not really inspired by actual events. It's kind of inspired by all of the stories that I don't know, like the real stories. And I think in my mind, you know, I wanted to kind of have a book where we could actually, you know, peek into people's minds and really understand what they're thinking, even if they don't kind of lean on other people or talk about it. And yeah, I think it was very inspired by my grandfather too. You know, as like the patriarch, he was just like, one of his like distinguishing traits was that he just never talked. Like he was a very quiet person, and he was really hard to know. You know, so I kind of, you know, thought about him as I was thinking of writing the Abel Paisley character as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's interesting because he is the patriarch, but this book, I mean, what lingers with me more is all the women in this book. And there's a lot of female characters. And so can we talk about the complexities of the mother-daughter relationships in this novel? They're so powerfully written, and they span many aspects of mothers and daughters, from loving yet complicated, abusive mothers, betrayal, absent mothers, and mothers that daughters never get to meet. So what was it like exploring all these varieties of this relationship, these different kinds of relationships?
You know, I think it gave me a new kind of like empathy and understanding for my own mother. I think, I mean, I don't know how much it influenced it, but, you know, I think while I was writing it, I was kind of deciding whether I was ever going to be a mother. You know, and then that made me kind of reflect on, you know, whether I feel like from in the society where, you know, my mother came from, my grandmother, you know, they didn't really have a choice. Like, it was just kind of assumed that you would be a mother, you know, and I don't think they ever questioned it. And so I just started thinking a lot about the consequences of that, and the consequences of that we don't really talk about. You know, and I think I didn't want any character in this book to just kind of be this this kind of victim, you know, like, in the way I wanted them to be complicated. And I think I wanted to blur the lines between kind of, I don't want to say, because they're not all abusers, but yeah, some characters, you know, the Vera character is abusive, and I didn't want to kind of just redeem her. You know, I wanted I wanted her to have a specific relationship with her own daughter, and I wanted that to be different from the relationship that she has with other people. You know, and because I think that's closer to reality. You know, somebody who is abusive or difficult or problematic is not that way with all other people, which makes everything all the more complicated.
Yeah, especially between, you know, sister and brother, there's going to be different, especially when the brother is the baby, and that changes family dynamics for sure. And then I thought it was interesting that Irene kind of resembles Vera in a way she might not have wanted to. Not as drastically maybe, but it's there, that same kind of anger, or maybe anger is the wrong word, but that pain is there.
Yeah, and I you know, I wanted to, you know, that's, I think family is one of the things, obviously that's the title, but that haunt you. And I think we don't always, I think when I was younger, I didn't see how, you know, my mother was kind of possessed by my grandmother at various moments. And now that I know about my grandmother, I know when she's being herself and when she's being my grandmother. And we don't really talk about that a lot. Yeah,
that is real. That is very real. Do you think that I can't remember if it's in here. I don't think it is, but do you think that Irene intended to become a mother?
I think no. I think she didn't really want to, but didn't really think that that was a choice. That's kind of what I wanted for her character.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So I know that a version of the first chapter has been published as a short story, and there's other chapters that are published as short stories as well. And when those were published, did you already have the idea that you wanted to turn them into a novel, or were you thinking of them as short stories at that time?
When I started writing it, I was thinking of it as short stories. The first chapter, The True Death of Abel Paisley, it was more like, I don't know, my age and I kind of went back and forth about what the book really was, like whether it was internet connected short stories or whether it was a novel. And, you know, it kind of kept getting reclassified. But then, so I think probably by when I published that story, I don't think we had sent it out for sale at that point to publishers. So I think probably, you know, it was supposed to be a standalone story, but I think definitely during the editorial process, you know, I kept editing it, and it definitely evolved into something else.
Yeah, I was thinking about that while I was reading it. I was like, these could just be short stories, but I also, like, you can kind of read it as both.
Yeah.
It makes it dynamic and really fun to read because, you know, sometimes you read a character and you're like, oh, I'll see them again later, and you don't. and I think that's cool.
Yeah, I like to say it's a novel in stories, and I think, you know, I don't think people talk about that form a lot, but, you know, there are really good books that are structured that way. Books, you know, one of the books that influenced me, and I don't know, because sometimes I've heard it described as a novel and sometimes I've heard it described as a short story collection, but a book that I really love was The Dewbreaker by Edwidge Danticat. And it's kind of structured with, you know, it's about a woman realizing her father was, you know, a dew breaker, kind of a torturer for a dictator in Haiti. And, you know, it starts with that revelation, and then it goes into all of the people who were kind of affected by him, you know, when he lived there. So, you know, I thought that structure was really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it reading yours. And what was that like, keeping track of all the work? I mean, was that a lot of organization?
Yeah, it was. No, I think I didn't really do it. I didn't really keep track for most of the writing, you know, but I think when I started working with my agent, and then later when I started working with Christine Pride from Simon & Schuster, who is my editor, that's when I really had to get the dates right. And that was really hard. We both were like, this is a lot of math. Like we had to go back over and just make sure everything was correct. That was pretty rough.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, actually, while I was reading it, because I can only imagine the process behind that and trying to actually make sure like all these people's ages match up and the years, and it's a lot of work. I would go back to the family tree in the beginning just to make sure I was.
I didn't actually have the family tree in the beginning. It was my agent who suggested that, and that that a lot of readers have said that that's incredibly helpful. So I'm glad.
Yeah, it is. And you know, I think I've seen books where there's more, I mean, random, like not related example, but like I feel like I think I've seen Game of Thrones family trees where it's just like crazy. I mean, that's a whole new level of, I can't even imagine that. So this is a pretty simple one to follow, which is nice. So I'm curious how, and speaking of research and keeping things organized, how did your career as a librarian inform the novel? Because it's clear that there's probably a lot of research involved, and whether that's personal research or also research to learn more about the time, but considering the time jumps in the subject matter. So what was that research process like? And did you learn anything that surprised you?
Yeah, I think at first being a librarian just kind of, it helped because I had all these resources, and whenever I was kind of interested in a topic, like I started out just by reading a lot of books about Jamaican history, and different books, and then I could order them. But then I learned as I started using more databases, I found kind of more archival material that's been digitized. And then also when I was working at Newark Public Library, I also started to we would have genealogists come, my coworkers would bring in genealogists, and that really like made me more interested in genealogy. So, after I started writing this book, then I started kind of researching my family tree, which kind of changed the trajectory of the book. And I found out a lot of things about my family that I hadn't known. And I kind of wanted to reflect that in the book too.
Yeah. Yeah. Did anything come up that, like, I just thought about how, Debbie had the journal. Did anything like that detailed come up for you? Like that informed that aspect of it?
No, I wish. Yeah, I couldn't find it.
That could be a scary thing to find, but
no, but I wish, like I didn't get like real documents or anything. Cause I don't think my family didn't really leave like elaborate records, but, yeah, no, I mean, I definitely found out some family secrets though, like that nobody really wanted to talk about. But yeah, no, I was surprised that I was able to like go pretty far back with some of these databases and figure out kind of like not all the way, but just to go up to the like great grandfather level, or which I hadn't ever been able to do before.
Mm-hmm.
So that was different. But yeah, the story that you're talking about, Atonement, and for people who haven't read it, it's about a character, a white woman who one day is kind of given a diary by her father, and the diary belonged to a plantation owner in Jamaica during the 1800s, and that was actually something I discovered too while I was researching it. Was I started reading a book about the diaries of Thomas Thistlewood, who is, a real plantation owner in Jamaica who kept very detailed, graphic diaries, about everything he did in regards to slaves in his diary while he was in Jamaica. And so, yeah, I wanted to kind of fashion the Debbie character, kind of thinking about what the descendants of him would kind of process, how they would process something like this today.
Mm-hmm. I was, and I won't get too deep for spoiler purposes, but I was surprised of what Debbie did with it. And I expected the route that I think her peers intended, just to not give anything away. So I'm curious if that was the right decision, but I did like the poetic aspect of that you included. So speaking of, actually, that kind of goes into my next question. Your book also features a lot of supernatural occurrences. And so in the first chapter, a ghost appears. Later, a character recalls an exorcism he experienced as a child, and a group of little girls transform into creatures from Jamaican folklore. What inspired this aspect of the novel?
At first it just started from me like recalling a lot of conversations with my family. I think that is a part of Caribbean culture. I think, just to kind of talk about the supernatural, talk about, duppies or ghosts, and to, and I feel like that was always really casual conversation when I was little, and it always like scared me. I was always like very, I was always very scared of the dark. I would like sleep with like I remember I would always sleep with a blanket over my head because I just didn't want to see anything because it felt like everybody in my family could see ghosts. But yeah, so it started with me just kind of reflecting on that. But then I started reading more like different folklore. And then I think as I had the characters kind of thinking about their relationships with their families, I think I wanted them to have some kind of moment of catharsis or confrontation, but I felt like it didn't feel like natural. And, it seemed like, because I was imagining that family to be like mine. And I was kind of thinking what would drive these conversations to happen. And I think I settled on like a supernatural force being kind of the thing that leads to kind of catharsis in these families. So I think, I think I wanted to kind of think about trauma, intergenerational trauma, and I wanted to think about how it manifests in people's lives. And, I wanted kind of the supernatural to be kind of a metaphor for that.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah. So and it was fun. So, I mean, it was like, once I started doing it, I liked kind of the idea of thinking about the different ways that, the supernatural could appear in each story. And I was also in addition to books, I was also heavily influenced by horror movies. So I was watching a lot of.
Say you had there's multiple genre feelings. Like you have the drama and a little bit of romance. And then you have there's definitely some moments of feeling like it's horror. And it's just really a really great read. And I like horror movies too. So maybe that's what I love. And I like folklore and all that stuff. Like it has such a great feel to it while you're reading it. Some moments, of course, are harder than others. And with so many characters, I felt like you were writing so empathetically to them all. Well, most of them. I won't say all of them. Yeah. Plenty. There's a few that don't deserve any, and they don't get it, and that's good. It's particularly the plantation owners. But do you have any characters that you feel most empathetic to, or are your favorite after writing them?
I think it changes. I do I don't think I feel like empathy towards the three little girls because they're more like they're a bit symbolic. But yeah, they were like fun characters to write. And
I loved their collective voice.
Yeah.
in that moment.
Yeah, that was just there are certain things that were just fun to write, but I don't know. I mean, I guess some of the certain characters feel more real to me than others. I think the Irene character feels very real. I think Vera, even though she's a bad, in some ways character, she's the character that probably interests me the most, I guess. But yeah, probably Irene is the character I feel the most actual empathy for.
I don't know. I didn't form a question about her, but I think my heart broke a little bit for Estelle and her daughter. Do you want to say anything about how writing that was, or I mean, you don't have to, but I'm trying to think of a question around them, but it was an interesting, just the difference, I guess, between Abel's first family and his second family, and the differences between his daughters, and Estelle's just more of a tragic character.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to have a character who, to kind of show that even though you don't necessarily have trauma directly inflicted on you, you can kind of absorb and sense things anyway. And I guess I wanted Estelle to be a character who absorbs kind of everything going on around her.
Yeah.
And I also wanted her to be like an artist trapped in this family of, people who don't understand her. Yeah, I mean, I think with that one story, there are kind of a lot of influences too.
Yeah, I mean, even the way her daughter responded to her is very interesting. Like how she was kind of the mother because she had to be to her mother, which is relatable and definitely something maybe we don't talk about as much either. I'm looking at some line notes that I have. And everyone who's here, feel free to add your questions into the Ask a Question area. And Hillary, thank you for buying the book. You will not regret it. It is wonderful. And yeah, I will keep asking questions, but we can, you're welcome to put your questions in any time. So I have a few more. So how long did it take to go from idea to publication? I know you said you've been writing this for 12 years, and that includes all the various stories, but how did the idea change too during the process?
I think in the beginning, I just had ideas for separate stories. And I think, I had written that essay about my father being a police officer. And then when I was in the MFA program, I kind of tried to fictionalize it. And, I think I would learn something else and layer it kind of on top. Like, yeah, I think this book worked in a lot of layers. Like originally it was kind of, just this buddy cop kind of short story. And then I was just reading a lot about Rastafarianism and then kind of thinking about my family's relationship to kind of Rastafarianism. And I think I just, and then I saw a video actually of Haile Selassie, the Emperor of Ethiopia, coming to Jamaica in 1966. And I just kind of got the idea to set it on that day. It just all like, and that chapter is called The Lamb or the Lion. And I definitely spent the longest amount of time writing that one. I think what was hardest is, I think over the course of 10 years, you change a lot as a writer. So when I first started writing the first half of this book, I was a different kind of writer. And I also think I didn't know how to write a story at all. So I had to figure it out, and it took me a really long time. So, and then towards the end, it really, the second half was a lot faster and a lot easier to write. I think I had a more of a sense of how to, build a character and how to create a story arc. But the beginning was really hard. But yeah, at some point I went from kind of having it just be these separate short stories. And then I realized that it would be easier if they were all in one family. And that really, I was writing about my own family inadvertently. So they might as well just be one family. And then later, it was kind of like around the period where my grandfather was kind of showing, he was starting to show like early signs of dementia. And, I was kind of thinking about how, all the things that we've never said to him, like all the kind of information that was going to be lost. And I kind of had created this kind of character and thought about the way this character's life, this one man's life in secret kind of influenced everybody else's life and changed the trajectory of everybody else's life too.
Yeah, it's a great connection. You said that it was more difficult in the beginning. Do you feel that happened from writing more and your growth as a writer, or do you think the MFA helped with that? I know that everyone has mixed MFA feels, but I'm curious if that was a good support in helping you reach that place with the novel.
I feel like the MFA program was really good for brainstorming. I feel like the seeds of a lot of ideas came there. The chapter Stella's Black Eye, I started writing in the MFA. The Lamb or the Lion, I started writing the MFA. Gratitude, I started writing the MFA. So I think, a lot of ideas came to me. I just didn't really know what to do with those ideas. So I think I had to learn and read a lot more before I really had a good grasp of where to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, they say half the job is reading, so. Yeah,
I think it takes a long time. I think I always thought I was going to be like, Carson McCullers and publish a book at 23. But I think it takes most people a long time to figure it out. Yeah.
It's a relief to not, I guess once you're out of that age, it's a relief not to feel like, well, it didn't happen and now I'm not going to peak too early or something. Yeah. You get to enjoy it later and maybe in a more mature way or something,
I think you're also embarrassed by some of the things that you wrote when you were starting out, and you're glad that they didn't get published.
That's true. Has your family, I'm assuming they've read the book, or how did they respond to it?
I don't think my parents have read the book.
Do you not want them to?
Yeah, and I don't really want them to, but they have given it to a lot of people, and they're happy that I wrote a book. But yeah, I don't think they like fiction, so I don't think they're going to read it. But my some of my aunts and my brother and my sisters have read the book, and they like it. They were glad about it. I feel like they latch on to like the tiniest little detail and think it's them, but yeah. But, yeah, the response is better from my family than I thought it would be.
Good. Yeah. I know that's always kind of the nerve-wracking thing, I think, for writers too, is like, and I've been told from writing teachers, like, everyone's just going to assume it's them. So try not to, get too worried about that, because everyone's going to do it at some point. So the author, Helen Phillips, describes your book as part immigrant narrative, part ghost story, part historical fiction, and part family drama. Why did you decide to incorporate so many genres in one book? I think you might have touched on this a little bit, but.
I think at first I was doing it out of boredom. I think because I had spent so much time writing it, and I think, I was also working a lot and I didn't really have a lot of free time. So when I would come back to it, I would put it away for a long time. When I would come back to it, I would kind of need something to get reinvested into it. So I would kind of make a drastic change. I think I like to do that as a writer. I like to, make a very drastic change at the 11th hour. So I think it was just like kind of being playful. Started out as being playful, but then I think it kind of made sense, just as a way for each chapter to kind of, not each chapter, but some chapters to encapsulate like a very distinct time in Jamaican history, and also to kind of connect certain things to a tradition, to like within a tradition. So, there's a part at the end that's set during the 19th century, during slavery in Jamaica, and I did want to write it. I think at the time I'd been teaching a lot of slave narratives, like American slave narratives, at a community college, and I taught Harriet Jacobs' Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl a lot. And some other narratives, and they were kind of, I wanted to kind of imitate the kind of sentimentalist tradition that they were written in. So a lot of it was kind of thinking of specific works or sources of inspiration and kind of talking back to them, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and it really is so beautifully written in that way of such a, we were talking about the fusion earlier, and it's just, it adds so much more to the narrative, and it's just a beautiful way to write it. And it's so unique. I love it. It's really, really wonderful. So if anyone has any questions, don't be shy and get those in there. But what books, you've kind of said a few too, but what books or authors inspired you while you were writing this? Or were there any particular horror movies that you were like, oh yeah, that is inspiring or gets the creative juices going?
I don't think there are like specific horror movies, but I think I was watching a lot of those like kind of paranormal activity kind of movies, the kind of like haunted house movies. And I think especially the paranormal activity movies, I think, and they might have come out later, like when I was almost finished, but I think they kind of just, I didn't realize how much horror movies were about family. And how that a lot of them are really, usually it's about a family secret that's kind of buried, all this kind of supernatural mess happens until like they kind of figure out what it is, or they admit what it is. Yes, and also I love demonic possession movies. I feel like and probably when I started writing this, that's when Netflix came out, so I just like stay in my living room and just watch whatever was on. But yeah, I think those were the biggest inspiration, or the idea of like kind of somebody being buried in the basement, and that just seemed like a perfect kind of metaphor for secrets.
Those are all the kinds of horror movies that I try not to watch because they terrify me. Like when you said that they're like about family and family secrets, I thought of Hereditary.
That came out later, but yeah, that is the kind of movie that has like everything, like demons, witches.
That movie messed me up for. Go ahead.
But also in terms of books, I think one of the first books that I had ever read that I felt like was a Caribbean kind of family saga, even though it has other kind of families in it was white teeth. You know, she has the character Irie and the mother Claire, who are Jamaican. And there's this part where she has this kind of like family tree, but it's kind of like a joke, you know, the names are missing. But that was the first time I saw somebody like kind of acknowledge how like complicated Caribbean families can be, and Caribbean lineage and genealogy can be. And so I kind of was inspired by that. And also, you know, the Edwidge Danticat book. Definitely like Toni Morrison, Beloved and A Mercy. Michelle Cliff, who's a Jamaican writer, I was inspired by her book, her books A Bang, and also a book called No Telephone to Heaven.
I haven't read her before. Yeah, definitely get Beloved from parts of this. Yeah, it's just, if whoever's watching, if you haven't gotten the book yet, I highly recommend. There's so many characters I'm trying to think of. Did you do any field trips to Jamaica while you were writing this?
I did go to Jamaica, actually. I mean, I guess that you could say that was kind of one of the reasons that I got inspired to write this too. I had, you know, I came to America when I was 5, and then but mostly with my mother's side of the family, not my father's. So we went back when I was smaller to see my grandmother, my mother's mother. But once she passed away, we kind of stopped going for many years. And so I didn't start going again till I was in college, probably my senior year of college. And that's when I really got to know my father's family. So since then I've been going back. So I made a lot of trips. And I got to know, you know, my grandmother and my grandfather on that side of the family. And we also went to the this place in Jamaica called Frankfield, which is very rural. It's in Clarendon, and yeah, I didn't realize that there was this town, and it's kind of where all the people with the last name Card come from.
Oh,
you know, or like that same close by. Like when I started to look at records and do genealogy, it was actually on that side of the family, it was fairly easy up until a certain point because every card is just there. You know, so that actually kind of inspired the kind of Herald Town place, like this kind of place where everybody kind of springs from in the book.
Yeah. Are you, while you were doing research, were you sharing what you found with your family, and are you the first person to really go this deep into your history?
I think so, but although, you know, one of my uncles is always really has been kind of looking into things too. I shared it, but I was like very sneaky about the way I shared it because I didn't really want to talk about writing a book. But I did share, like, you know, the genealogy kind of revelations with my mother, and I would ask her questions, but I didn't mention that they were for a book or like research.
Yeah, I could see that. That's funny. I have an uncle too that keeps track of things and is more what would be the word? The historian of the family.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, if we don't have any questions, I'm looking through some things.
Thanks for writing the book, Hillary.
Yes. Please get it. It's I thought it was interesting. Actually, I think there's a few people on this family tree we don't hear about.
Yeah, there are a bunch of people.
2 of them. Yeah. Do you see like, is this it, or do you see expanding at all in any other kind of story, or?
I do, actually. I didn't think so, but actually people in Q&As have suggested it or asked about it, so I thought about it. And yeah, I feel like I could it feels easy because I kind of thought about these characters for a while, so yeah, I feel like I could just keep going. And it would be nice to, I don't know, I mean, I guess now that I've written it, I do feel like and it's probably me being like a perfectionist, but I could see how, like, I could have put more into it. So yeah, there are some characters that I think I want to revisit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's some that are more brief that, like I said, we don't see again, but I think it works for the story. So it would be great to see more. I mean, I was thinking about that. I'm like, actually, when I finished, I was like, but I want more answers, or like I want more. I want to hear how something turned out, or with certain characters, and I hope if anyone's watching this but that could help with this. This should absolutely be like an HBO series or a movie or something. If anyone's listening, Reese's Book Club, Bellatrist, something.
It actually was a Bellatrist book pick.
Cool.
Yeah, when the hardback came out.
Oh, great. I don't know if Bellatrist has, well, I know they have movie connections in some way, but so Elizabeth's wondering, is it too soon to ask what's next?
I'm working on another book. And it actually, I wasn't sure, like I was kind of going back and forth, but the other book does have a character from this book reoccur, even though it's in a different setting. It's in Florida. And it's kind of about a group of like immigrant women working at a wealthy retirement, in a wealthy retirement community. But yeah, the Irene character, I think, is kind of reappears in that book.
Cool. Yeah, I remember Irene. She lived in Florida and then moved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of set during that time.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. And I don't know if you can see on the big screen, but like I said, I definitely can. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I do have a TV agent, so maybe.
Okay. I give book ideas to a production company that they asked me for book recommendations. So I definitely said this one because I
thanks.
really do think so. And the cover is great, in case anyone hasn't seen.
Yeah, I think I had never, when I at first sold or whatever, I just had never pictured it that way because I just hadn't seen a lot of Jamaican. I don't think I'd ever seen a Jamaican like kind of limited series before. But then, I did see Small Island was made into a series by Andrew Levy, and it's not based on a book, but the show Small Axe I thought was by Steve McQueen was really interesting, and so I think I can see it more now.
If you haven't seen it, then that's even more reason why we should have it.
Yeah, that too.
Well, if anyone doesn't have any other questions, I'm curious if anyone who's watching has read it yet. I also thought Louise was interesting. Where we left her, I felt like we could definitely learn more about her too.
Yeah, because she's kind of the one who continues the family.
Yeah. And then, well, I don't want to spoil anything. Well, I don't see any other questions. If this will be rewatchable, so if anyone wants to share with their audience, it will be on our YouTube channel as well. And if you haven't purchased yet, the green button right there to get Maisy's book, These Ghosts Are Family. It's such a rich saga and just a beautiful read. And it has moments where you'll be like, and moments where you might laugh a little bit, and it really just has everything, I feel. So it was a beautiful read, and congratulations. I'm so glad it's getting the praise that it's getting. And thank you so much for being with Book Soup tonight, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm glad that you're reading it, and I hope we didn't spoil anything for you. And yeah, thank you again, Maisy, and thank you everyone for tonight. I know it's Friday night, and I know we're in a pandemic, so you shouldn't be out partying anyway, but I know it's Friday still, so I appreciate everyone for being with us tonight, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.